All right, thank you, Jane. So this talk is about managing dependencies with confidence and how Greenkeeper aims to help with that. But what does managing dependencies even mean? Why do we need to manage dependencies, and why shouldn't we be confident about that? So for a fact, there are a lot of modules out there. Over 300,000 in the NPM registry at this point. But they're not just out there, we are actually using them. And you can check that with a little experiment. So if you go into your project, you go to the file tree, and you open the node modules folder, and you will notice that you get to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll forever because there are just so many modules. So yes, they are there. And to add to that, they're constantly changing. If you'd remove that node modules folder and ran npm install again, even without changing the package JSON, you would probably have a totally different folder there. And so not only are there so many new tools and frameworks, they are also having new versions all the time. And you want to keep up to date with them. You want to make sure your application is still working with them. And so sometimes npm using it can feel a little bit overwhelming, where you're surprised with what you end up with. So looking at it that way, these modules seem a little problematic. Can we do without them? So what would be the alternative? Do we want to have only a few libraries by only a few people? Do we want to implement every single algorithm by ourselves instead of like focusing on the core experience we're trying to create? Do we want to use old stuff? Do we want to pass on cool new things? Do we want to stop innovating? Or do we want to be exposed to age-old security problems? I think that that's a good thing, that there are a lot of modules and that they are constantly changing and being brought up to date. And the benefits of that outweigh the pain points as long as we keep on building better tools to handle them. And Greenkeeper tries to be such a tool that makes it easier for us. And Laurie once described Greenkeeper as NPM outdated as a service. So, hi, I'm Stephan, as Jane already told you. And I had the idea to build Greenkeeper, and I built it with a bunch of friends. And usually at this point of the talk, I'd list a few projects I've been working on, but I figured that these actually logically lead to me coming up with the idea for Greenkeeper. So I'll just tell you about them. So back when I started programming, all I wanted to do was build apps. Especially for the iPhone, that's just what got me into it. But soon I figured that it's just way too complicated, it's way too annoying, and way too repetitive. So one day I found Hoodie. It's an open source project that offers you a generic backend for your apps. So you have user sign up, you have data storage, you have sync, and there are also plugins. You can do payments, social sign up, all the stuff you would be building over and over and over again. And that's exactly what I wanted to have. And that is Hoodie. You can check it out at hood.ie. But like most open source projects, it wasn't quite 100% there yet. So instead of building my apps, I got involved with Hoodie. And this is how I felt when I started working on Hoodie. It was just this huge monolithic thing, and I didn't quite know where things are. So we split it up into many small modules, and it benefited us in a lot of ways. And one of them, it's not only code, one of them, Gregor already talked about that on Wednesday, is that it made it also really, really easy for new people to come in because they know where what is and how to change it without having to know everything and without fearing to break everything. So that was cool, we broke it up. And along the way, I wrote a tool called Semantic Release. It's there to publish all these modules, because if you have just one repository, you can do your publish workflow, it's easy. But if you have 20 modules, it gets a bit repetitive again. So there are entire talks about this tool. What I want to say is that the number one learning from this tool is that enforcing and building on best practices is a good idea, because that's what it does. It works with commit message conventions and thereby figures out change logs and version numbers for you. So now that we had the architecture there, and now that we figured out publishing, we could go back to building Hoodie. And as I said, we had a lot of modules, and we had a lot of common dependencies. So all of them depend on Lodash as a standard library. We shared the same test setup, so we have tab and all these things there, or we were using the same server framework or PouchDB to work with the database. And usually, when a new version came out of this module, we were really excited. There are going to be new features, bug fixes, performance improvements. But now, our happy little kitten got really, really sad because there was this new Lodash version. There were 20 different repositories. We had to go in, change the package JSON, run the tests, see if we have to change something, create a branch, create a pull request, wait for the CI to pass, wait for a review, and then we could merge it. And so just staying on top of dependencies took away a lot of time for us. So I couldn't just let this kitten be that unhappy. So I walked up to my friend Christoph, who was also working on Hoodie at the time. And I said, we need to automate this, and there are just two things that we need. First, we need a way to have real-time hooks whenever NPM module gets a new version. And so, luckily, Hoodie is built on top of CouchDB, and Jan Leonard, who is one of the CouchDB contributors, also works on Hoodie, and so I knew like he was constantly in my ear. CouchDB is awesome, it got this changes feed built in. We're also using it for Hoodie, so whenever data changes, you get these hooks in real time. It's pretty cool. And what I knew as well, NPM is built on CouchDB. Originally, it was just one Couch app, and NPM exposes that changes feed. You can just go to this URL, it follows the standard CouchDB protocol, and you'll get real-time updates of everything that changes in the registry. So, first part was done, we had real-time updates. And so we wanted to automate these pull requests that we were sending, and we needed a way to simply do that, because we knew we have a lot of modules, we have a lot of repositories, and cloning all of them, downloading all the stuff, it's just going to be a lot of overhead when we just want to change the package JSON. And so that was one of the very few times where I went to the NPM search and didn't find what I wanted. So I went to Twitter. I want to create commits via the GitHub API with minimal overhead, ideally sending only a patch. Is there anything ready-made? Hashtag lazy Twitter. 4 days later, which was incidentally exactly 1 year ago, I wrote another tweet. The search is over. I wrote it myself. And so there's this module. You can use it. It's called GitHub Change Remote File, and it works with the GitHub API pretty closely. So it exposes, it's the so-called Git Data API, and exposes trees and files and blobs. And so you can just create commits and branches and pull requests without ever cloning. So there was the second part. We had real-time updates from NPM, and we had a tool to simply create pull requests. So that's pretty much all we needed for a bot. It was there, and this is how it originally worked. So NPM told us there's a change in the registry. We figured out if that's a new version of a package. We checked who's depending on that dependency, and then we sent them a pull request. And that looked a little something like this. So you have this pull request. It tells you which dependency, what version. There's some metadata, some suggestions what you could do with this. We also pulled in the change log and the commits that happened. So this was pretty great. Like if you're fine with it, you just hit the merge button, one click. You don't have to do it over and over again for all our modules. That was great. But it only really worked for what we call out-of-range updates. And I want to explain what this means. So on the bottom here, you can see a pretty typical dependency definition from Lodash to version 1.0.0. And on the top, the red cloud is what the NPM registry is, and we see that there's only one version available, 1.0.0. And so if a new version comes out, a patch release 1.0.1, it would be outside of the definition that we have here. Of course, NPM offers version ranges, so if we define Lodash at ~1.0.0, it would be included, and 1.1.0 would be an out-of-range update. And equally, if we use the caret character, then 1.1.0 would also be included, but 2.0.0 would be an out-of-range update. And that's what it was really useful for these out-of-range updates. If the tests still pass, you can merge it, fine. But what about in-range updates? Aren't these the ones that are especially dangerous? Because they just happen. You don't notice and you don't have control over it because you define your range and they're included in there. And how do we know if it's still working? So we call this the Schrödinger app, or the Schrödinger state, where your app is working and where it's both working and broken at the same time until you do npm install the next time. So you only know when you do npm install and npm test, then you can know whether your app is still working. And whom could we possibly ask to constantly run npm install and npm test? Well, it's this guy. I'm sorry, it's these folks. And like we noticed pretty quickly when we create these pull requests, we trigger CI builds, and Travis was like working, or any other CI service. They just run when we create pull requests. And this data is really, really valuable because all we changed is this version. And now if the status of the build would go from green to red, that means that the version update is no longer compatible. So for in-range updates, we changed the mechanism a little bit. So we still got the information from NPM, we figured out who's depending on it, but we checked, is it inside of the range? And then we didn't just send pull requests right away, we open branches. And now we wait for the result of the CI to come back to us. And if it passes, everything is fine. We delete that branch again, you will not notice. But if it fails, we know that this in-range update broke your app. And then we would open the pull request, and you can see with these alarming emojis that your build process is broken, or if you're a module, you could potentially be like broken in production. If other people install your module right now, it could be broken. So you have this information, you have it in real time, and it's really, really great also for in-range updates. And our little cat was happy again. So it's pretty cool, but we wanted to make it available for others as well. And so, of course, Greenkeeper itself is just an NPM module. So you go and install it globally, where I is a shortcut for install and -g for -- global. And then you have the Greenkeeper CLI available. You do Greenkeeper login, which will do the OAuth dance with GitHub, so we have the necessary rights to create branches. And then you change into your project and you run Greenkeeper enable or GK, which is the shortcut. And in the beginning, we really wanted to focus on the service, so we had this CLI workflow. And as you see right now, this is on the node day, but dependencies are a problem that also affect front-end or design work. And so we figured it's time to make it more accessible for other people as well. And we didn't want to waste 4 slides just for explaining how it works. So I'm happy to show you our new Greenkeeper web app. And everything happens in the browser now. Everything is self-explanatory. You have a fast search, and if you want to enable your repository, it's just one click on the switch. So you can access that at app.greenkeeper.io, and it's in beta right now, so you can only find it there. And we would be really, really happy if you could try it out and tell us what you think about it. But we'll eventually make that the default way to use Greenkeeper and keep the CLI as a pro tool. But it's not only more accessible, it offers us more opportunity to visualize stuff. So as a first step, if you go to the web app and click into a project, you have an overview over the pull requests you created and what status there is. But we'll add more insight here in the future, not only for consumers of packages, but also for authors of packages, so you can see how your versions perform with other people's projects if you're breaking someone else. It's not there yet, but we're trying to get there. But there's a problem, as there usually is if you involve other people, or yeah, especially in software engineering. But I told you there are a lot of modules, people use a lot of modules, and all of a sudden there's a lot of noise. Like you have lots of emails and you have lots of pull requests because there are all these new versions all the time. And so this is like the #1 complaint we get with the service, that it's too much noise. Like, how should we cope with this? And we're trying to find ways to make this better, but there are some underlying concepts that I want to explain first to put this into context. So a lot of people ask us to just send a weekly digest, for example, where you can see all the versions that changed and then open a pull request for that. But that's not really the philosophy of Greenkeeper. Like, we think that running these updates in isolation, in real time, is really what makes it valuable. Because you know what broke your app, and you know it in real time, you know it immediately, and you can act upon it. Another suggestion is to automatically merge pull requests as soon as they pass. And we think that Greenkeeper should take chores away from you, so you can really focus on making decisions, but it shouldn't make decisions for you. We want to report arising problems early, but we don't want to cause new problems, because saying merging a pull request automatically out loud just sounds dangerous to me already. So here are some tips. As I said before, there are version ranges in NPM, and they're great. You should use them. Because if you use version ranges, you will get a lot less pull requests and emails, because most of the time, stuff just keeps working, everything is fine. You will not get a pull request, and only if stuff breaks, you can get these. And these version ranges really use the information that is encoded in the version number with semantic versioning. So if people publish according to the semantic versioning spec, everything will be fine. And unlike before, with Greenkeeper together with your test suite, you will know when stuff breaks. So use version ranges. It's great, and it will greatly reduce the noise. The second part, or the second tip, is actually pretty obvious, but still I want to mention it. Because, of course, Greenkeeper can only work with the information we get from the projects and the tests that are there. And so we have some complaints when people have flaky test suites, for example, where they depend on a third-party service, for example, for uploading coverage information or doing browser tests, and then that makes their tests fail, and we send them pull requests for that, and it's actually just a false positive. So what I want to say is here, like, of course there will be false positives, but it's also worth investing in your test suite to make it reliable, to make it have repeatable results, not only for Greenkeeper, but it's a good investment in general. Another tip is letting Greenkeeper do the chores. So, for example, if you have multiple pull requests for a single version, and you decide to merge one of these pull requests, Greenkeeper will just clean up for you. So if there are other pull requests with a version that would be lower or included in the new version range, it will just delete them for you. So you just have to make the decision, and afterwards Greenkeeper will clean up again. And equally, if you merge a Greenkeeper pull request and you have other Greenkeeper pull requests that would now be unmergeable because of a merge conflict in the package JSON, we will detect that and automatically rebase against your latest commit, so there are no more merge conflicts there. And you can just let Greenkeeper do these chores for you. All right, and there's the last tip. And it's great for Greenkeeper, but it's also great in general. So use disk tags. And disk tags are a concept that are built right into NPM, but in a way that you don't really notice them unless you look. So that's why I want to explain them. Again, we see this command, npm install Lodash, and on top there's our registry. There are a lot of versions in there. Have you ever wondered how NPM figures out which version to install at this point? Is it the highest version? Or is there something else? There is. It's called disk tags. And so whenever you do npm install a dependency, the default is to do add latest. And this is a disk tag. So it will install version 2.1.0 in this scenario because it has the latest disk tag on it. And usually latest also means highest, because when you do npm publish, what you really do is npm publish tag latest. So it it feels like it's always the highest, but you can modify this. So for one, you could change the latest tag. So with this command, npm this tag add Lodash at 2.0.0, you move that tag over to the other version, and now if other people want to use Lodash, they'd be ending up with version 2.0.0. And you can use completely different tags. So if you have a new major version, or you have a big refactor where you changed a lot of things, and you're sure it should be behaving like it was before, but you're not really sure, then it's a good idea to do this, where you publish this version with the beta tag. And so all the mainstream users will be ending up with your stable version that you had published before, but you can invite early adopters or testers and tell them to install this new version, and they can give you feedback, and you can fix stuff, and you can only make it available on the latest disk tag once you know it's really stable. And if you want to know more about this, I wrote an entire blog post about disk tags, but Greenkeeper only sends pull requests for versions that are on the latest tag. So if you use this, you can find a lot of bugs and then only send out pull requests that are like well tested and stable. But as I said, this is a very good idea even without Greenkeeper. So I don't want to be the person that's up here telling you that you're holding it wrong. But the thing is that Greenkeeper, the experience is suffering a bit from underlying problems. And we would rather want to fix the underlying problems rather than change Greenkeeper in working with them. Because as I said before, building tools that work and enforce best practices is a very good idea. And so if you have ideas that are in line with the philosophy that I laid out, how to reduce the noise, that would be great. Or if you want to help us educate other people to improve their test suites, for example, coverage results, you can just upload coverage results in an after step, and so if the service is down, your test suite won't report false negatives. If you see this, send pull requests to other projects, or if you see someone who's writing a big refactor, just tell them to use disk tags. And that way, we want to improve like the whole NPM ecosystem. And so, to sum this all up, writing software is embracing change. And Greenkeeper makes that change visible. Because it's not just noise that you get because you enabled Greenkeeper, it's things that are already happening. It's just getting them into your awareness and making them visible for you. So Greenkeeper is a service that we wanted to have for ourselves, but we made it available for everyone, which means you can use it for free on your open source repositories. But we also have support plans, private plans, or even enterprise plans if you want to have them. We support scope packages, and we're also working on shrink wrap support. So if you want to support us in our mission to improve the NPM ecosystem, that would be great, even if it's just enabling it for your modules. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephan.